Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at those photographs that I just took in the last video, and we're going to see if I can't pinpoint what is wrong with them and explain them to you and my thought process and each photo, and we'll go over them, take a look at them, and yeah, so let's jump right into that. So let's get started with this. So the first photograph, this is one of the better ones in my opinion, but it's still not my favorite, and I think I could have done better, especially up here, my settings. So my shutter speed is 1/80th of a second, my aperture was 5/6, or 5.6, sorry, 105 millimeters, oops, ISO 320. So, first off, I could definitely lower the aperture because the lens I'm using is relatively sharp at any aperture. It's a 24 to 105, or is it 105? Yeah, I think it's 105. 24 to 105 RF f4 lens. So that's a relatively sharp lens in general, and you don't need to have the aperture that that closed off to get sharp photos out of it. And then my ISO, I could have probably raised to maybe 400 to get that shutter speed up a little bit, to make the photo a bit sharper, because if you can see, it's not a very sharp photo. Like, here's kind of in focus. Also, where I focused wasn't amazing. I was in a rush. Okay, so the theme with most of these photos is I was in a rush because most of the time I had just parked on the side of the road, and I turned on my flashers, and I didn't want to get any attention, if that makes sense. So I was just trying to get out of the car, take a quick photo, and leave. Some of these photos were actually even just taken in my truck. Like, I didn't even get out. So definitely something you need to do is take your time when taking a photo like this, a landscape photo. Even so far as to choose one location, which is what I should have done. I was planning on doing originally, but I didn't. Is you want to choose one location and stick around that location until the lighting hits just right the way you want it, and then you capture that image. You don't want to go around taking a million photos like I did. So that's something I'm going to have to work on personally. But it's also something for you guys to keep in mind when you're taking taking photographs like this. So my settings, pretty basic. I just added a little bit. Well, here's what the original photograph looked like. So you can see that. So actually, I darkened it just a little bit. I brought all the highlights down. I brought up the shadows a little bit, brought up some of the whites, and brought down the blacks. I crushed the blacks a bit. And then I just made kind of like a basic S curve with my tone curve. I didn't touch the vibrance or saturation. Didn't touch any of the colors. Let's see. And then I changed the color processing down here. I think that's what that's called. I changed the calibration a bit down here in this section of Lightroom. So here you can see the difference that made. It's not a big difference, but I kind of like it. It changes the greens to a bit more of a yellow, almost. So personal preference. And I didn't change the white balance. So I didn't do too much to this photo. Anyways, moving on to the next one. So this one had some issues with it, and honestly, I like it. I needed to spend more time on it. So first big issue is you can't see it because I've edited it out very poorly, I might add. There's power lines going across this whole screen right here, and they go through this tree, and you can see little spots in the tree, like right here or right here, where I've edited it out, and it doesn't look good. This is something you should really do more in Photoshop and not Lightroom, and it's something I just didn't want to spend the time on it, because I was trying to get these edited quickly for the video. Which is another thing I need to do. I need to stop making these videos the same day I post them. I need to do it ahead of time. Other than that, though, the sky I think is relatively pretty. There's a lot of clouds and grass came out really clean looking. But here, let me show you the original. So it was dark, so I definitely brightened it up, and you can now see those power lines that were going across that I was telling you about. So, and then here in the tree, there's like, I don't know, I brought out too much of the orange there on accident. It wasn't really on purpose, but again, this is all personal preference, and you also have to keep in mind, like, everyone is their own worst critic. So if you like these photos, it's not to you, they may not be bad, or maybe they're really bad to you, I don't know. But like, to me, I don't really like the I'm telling you what I don't like about them. So okay, so here I definitely brightened this up because you saw I took down the contrast, took down the highlights, brought up the shadows, left the whites alone, brought down the blacks a bit, turned up the clarity. So essentially I just adds a bit of contrast, almost kind of like sharpening, but not really. Dehaze, so that also just kind of brings up the contrast as well in a way. So I can show you what that does real quick. Here it is. So you see, it kind of like, I want to say it kind of like adds saturation while contrast at the same time. So anyways, I'll just put that back where it was. There, 29. Okay. I didn't touch the vibrance or saturation. The S curve, made another one. I pretty much do that with most of my photographs, but I adjust them to what I think looks good each time. So I really crushed the highlights here, or I guess brought them down. I really brought down the highlights here, so it kind of made that sky, you can see that, made that sky go from kind of like a white blue to like a gray. And then the shadows, just brought those up. Alright, then for the colors, I adjusted the colors a lot, so I'll turn this off so you can see what that looked like. So I think it just brought out a lot of like little details. So I don't ever I don't use Lightroom sharpening. I just kind of leave it at its default, which is pretty much always on, just a little bit. So I don't touch that. And then I didn't use calibration this time. So, and then you can see my settings: ISO 640, 1/500th of a second, 64 millimeters at f4. Okay, so what I could have done better with my settings is this one. I was standing still a bit more when I took this photograph, but still I could have brought, I think, probably down to more like 1/80th of a second instead. Not 1/80th, what am I saying? Okay, I could have brought this down probably to 1/160th of a second instead, which would have allowed me to drop my ISO significantly to get rid of any extra noise. But then again, nice thing about modern cameras is ISO performance is relatively good. So other than that, though, this photo, the settings on this photo aren't complete trash, not completely terrible, but they could be improved. But once again, like I said, I was in a rush, something you don't want to do when photographing. So this one I took out my truck. I wanted to get out, but there was no place I could park to do so. But I would have gotten a much better photograph if I could, because I like this. I like this picture a lot more if I could have gotten a better photo. So if you look, there's actually a thing down here you can see that was in the way. I edited a little bit of it out in Lightroom. This would have just been a much better photo if I could have gotten out of the car, first off. Second off, it was too dark. So my ISO was 1250, 1/250th of a second, which seems relatively appropriate considering I was still in the car, slowly moving, trying to take this before anyone came around and I had to move. 77 millimeters. I used all the same lens for this, by the way, just because it was relatively versatile for what I was trying to do at the time. So then we brought up the exposure, brought down the contrast, brought down the highlights, rose the shadows a bit, brought up the whites, brought down the blacks. Same thing, bit of clarity, bit of dehaze. Basic S curve again. And past that, I changed the calibration ever slightly, but it's to a point where you're really not going to notice a difference. It's almost not even worth it, honestly. Okay, and then so that's it for this one. I wish I would have stopped. This is something I'm going to have to try to find a place to park and come back to do it again because I really like this spot. Anyways, okay, so next one. This one I also took in the car. It's kind of interesting. I could have gotten a better angle on it. There was a different angle I saw that I liked better, but this isn't completely terrible. Now, I did remove a couple signs from this one. If you can see right here and right here, I got rid of those signs, and that turned out relatively well. Lightroom does a relatively good job of removing stuff. Like, it's not completely terrible. Let's see, I think there was one down here. Yeah, so right in this area. Yeah, so you can see right there, that's kind of obvious that wasn't supposed to be there. And it's kind of discolored here, but I mean, if you're not looking for it, it's something that you won't notice too much unless you're pixel peeping. So my settings here, ISO, once again, 1250, 1/250th of a second. So I think that's relatively appropriate because it was also starting to get dark at this point. But as you can see, yeah, my aperture is as low as it could go, and I had to actually bring up the exposure quite a bit to even get this to work. So there's a lot of noise in this photo. Sorry about that. So I brought down the highlights. Let's see. Yeah, to bring down that sky a bit, I brought down the highlights. Shadows, I brought those up. The whites, I brought those up. Blacks brought down. Same thing with my clarity and dehaze, what I've been doing. I like to use that a lot. Maybe I should try to stop using that, but so far I think it's worked relatively well for a lot of my better images. Same basic S-curve. Let's see. And then very slight calibration. I think I might have synced the settings between these two photos and then just adjusted what I needed to, because once again, like I said, I was trying to do all this very quickly, which is something you shouldn't do. And so moving on to the next one. This is one where I would have wanted to stop down that aperture. And the reason for that is that way I could have gotten the moon in better focus. Something I didn't know, actually. So the night I was taking this, apparently there was supposed to be some sort of special moon that night. So this is why the moon looks like this. And I wish I could have gotten a better photo of that moon. I actually really like this photo as well. But the problem is, I think... Oh, okay, so I had the moon in a different place than I wanted to. So I don't like it centered here like this. So I cropped it so I can move it over to the side a bit. And it would look better if I didn't have to crop it. So it's something I should have paid attention to while I was taking the photo. So I changed my white balance here a bit because it was dark. I wanted to warm it up a bit. I brought down my highlights all the way, brought up my shadows, kind of touched my blacks. Texturize is something I didn't really need to use, but I did. It's also kind of like sharpening. Let's see, I'll bring that back to like... Let's do, I think, 5 or something. I don't know. Clarity, dehaze. Less extreme S-curve. Let's see. I don't touch split toning too often because I feel like it ruins my photographs usually. Personal opinion. And then I did touch the calibration. So just ever so slightly kind of changed the colors a little bit to a bit more like... a bit more of a lighter blue here and a bit more of a brownish green down here. Yeah, and that's basically it for that photo. So 1/500th of a second, ISO 2000. So that seemed relatively appropriate because I was still in the car. Like I said, I was in the car for a vast majority of these. So I was in the car for this one, and I could have probably lowered my shutter speed just a tiny bit, not too much because I was in the car, like I said, and then kept my ISO the same, but then changed my aperture to try to get a little bit more in focus, like this moon, for example, because the moon was really cool looking that night, but it's not in focus, sadly. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, moving on to the next photo. So this one, still... It could have been better. So I was looking for this whole time. This was the image I had in my mind. Was a tree like this, kind of like this one, except with the prettier sky. And I wanted the tree to be alone in the field with nothing else there, and I just couldn't find it. But that was the image I had in my head. So that's what I kept doing, is try finding a pretty tree with nothing else in the field. Wanted it to be alone, and I wanted it to be, you see the tree and then you see the horizon and nothing else. But I couldn't find what I was looking for. This one still has power lines in the way, but I didn't try to edit this one out. Maybe I should have, I don't know. Sunset looks cool. Problem is, so the ground was too dim, but the sky was too bright, and my camera was struggling to get that. So I really had to bring the shadows up, bring the highlights down to try to get this. I could have done multiple exposures, but like I said, the 100th time, I was in a hurry, and I had a tripod, but I never ended up using it. So I brought my clarity, and I dehazed it a little bit. You can see there's definitely a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise because I had to bring up that shadows quite a bit, and I was already at 2000 ISO. Honestly, I could have lowered my shutter speed a little bit maybe and brought down my ISO a little bit, and that would have fixed some of my problems there. The sky started to get pretty, but I don't know. I brought down my contrast because it was just, there was too much contrast already in the photo between the sky conflicting with the ground. And then a slight curve here. I didn't really mess with that too much. Let's see. I did change some of the colors here so we can see what that looked like. Yeah, so I just made the grass a little greener in this one, and then I tried to make the sky a little bit more vibrant. Let's see, and then I did change the calibration. So same thing I usually do. So you can see there. Let's see. I need to stop messing with this as much. I'm not gonna lie. I need to start to leave that alone a bit more often, or at least learn how to use it better. So let's move on to, I did change my white balance. I cooled it down a bit. And then here's what the original photograph looked like. So here's what I'm talking about. See how the sky was way too bright here, and then the ground was way too dark. And honestly, the fact that you're able to recover that at all is kind of amazing. So once again, it's a testament to like modern technology. Is like, despite how much contrast there is, I was still able to recover it for the most part. There's a couple real bright spots in here that I don't think are recoverable. But the ground for the most part was recoverable, although you can see there was a lot of noise in it. So yeah. So these were the best photographs I got of the night. Some of them I actually do kind of like these two specifically. I told you I wish I could have done better on them. That's something I'm going to have to go back and do. This one I thought was really cool. I have to go back and do this one again sometime if I can. It's going to be hard to get that. But yeah, that's my main issues with the photos I took this specific time. Really, is what you need to do is, like I said in the beginning, is you need to find a composition that you really like, and wait until the light hits it just right, the way you want it. Don't try to go around and take a million photographs and just choose the best one like I did. It won't work out in your favor. You might get a couple good ones if you're lucky. It's more trouble than it's worth. It's the best way to put it. So okay, so next video will be on cool indoor photography ideas that you can do, because we're all kind of stuck at home right now. I'm thinking macro photography, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, stick around for the next video. I'm trying to do a schedule where I post every other day, and I'm trying to keep up with that. I have schoolwork I have to keep up with as well, because yeah, at home learning, that's woo, I love that. Not really. Yeah, if you're at all interested in what I'm doing and want to keep up, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below, and it'd be greatly appreciated. I want to keep pushing out content like this. I'm trying to come up with new ideas every day. So if you like this video, leave a thumbs up. That helps me out and lets me know what kind of content you guys are interested in. So I'll see you guys in the next one.